Canada was made a country in July 1st, 1867. It took several years for Confederation to take place. There were several reasons the British colonies decided to come together as one country. After Confederation, it took more than a century for all 9 provinces and 3 territories to become part of Canada, but let's skip back a couple of years to the 1500s.
In the 1500s, explorers from Europe began coming to North America to claim lands. They saw that the land had many resources, so they began to settle here. Britain and France were the 2 European countries that settled most in Canada. When they arrived, explorers were greeted by Native Americans who had lived in North America for thousands of years. Most of the time, Europeans had difficult relations with the Native Americans. They didn't get along, not for hundreds of years.
In the 1860s, there were many British colonies in what we now call Canada: British Columbia, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and the province of Canada, which is modern-day Ontario and Quebec. These colonies were facing several problems that were leading them to think joining together would make things easier.
Problem 1. Britain wanted to become less involved in the government of their colonies in North America because it was so expensive and time-consuming.
Problem 2. Because the people of the province of Canada were split into the French and English, they had different priorities and ideas about how their province should be run. The leaders from there decided that maybe joining other colonies with theirs would help solve their own political problems.
Problem 3. The relationship between the United States and British North America hadn't been stable since the U.S. gained their independence. The relationship got even worse when the British supported the South in the American Civil War. The North won, and they then wanted to take over parts of what is now Canada because they were angry at the British.
Problem 4. As the colonies got bigger, they began building railways and roads. The cost to build these things were high, and therefore the colonies needed more money. If they joined together, they would have more taxes, and the colonies would have an easier time economically.
Problem 5. For their economies to do well, the colonies needed to be able to sell their goods. If they joined together, selling their goods throughout the country would be easier.
These problems led the leaders of the colonies to organize conferences. In these conferences, over the next 5 years, the leaders created the base of what is now Canada.
The Charlottetown Conference. In 1864, the leaders of Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick had thought about joining together to discuss a maritime union. The leaders of the province of Canada asked if they could join the conference they had planned to discuss a bigger union of all the British colonies. The maritime colonies allowed them to attend, and so from September 1st to September 9th, 1864, all the leaders met in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, for the first of 3 conferences that would lead them to Confederation.
The Quebec Conference took place October 10th to the 27th of 1864. At this conference, they had to decide how their new country would be run. What they came up with was called the 72 Resolutions. Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland both took part in the conference, but neither decided to join Confederation at that time. British Columbia did not take place in the conference.
The London Conference. This was the last of 3 conferences, and it took place in London, England, from December of 1866 to January of 1867. In this conference, the leaders of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and the province of Canada had to finalize the 72 resolutions and come up with an agreement. From this, they created the British North American Act of 1867. It had to be approved by the British Parliament before Confederation could go ahead.
After the Queen declared this on March 29th, 1867, the colonies prepared to join together as one. The Act came into effect on July 1st, 1867, and the provinces became one dominion called Canada.
Joining Confederation.
On July 1st, 1867, only 4 provinces made up Canada: Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick.
Manitoba joined on July 15, 1870. On the same day, Canada's first territory joined Confederation, the Northwest Territories.
On July 20th, 1871, British Columbia joined the country of Canada.
Prince Edward Island joined Confederation on July 1, 1873, even though the leaders took part in the conferences.
Canada's second territory, the Yukon Territory, joined Confederation on June 13, 1898. In 2003, it was renamed Yukon.
On September 1, 1905, Saskatchewan and Alberta became provinces of Canada.
Newfoundland joined Canada on March 31, 1949. In 2001, it was renamed Newfoundland and Labrador.
Canada's third territory, Nunavut, joined Confederation on April 1, 1999.
And that is how Canada became a country.